All stories posted on our channel are stories from our subscribers and created by us based on real events we've experienced and witnessed. We post new stories every day for your entertainment, that we hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
I still remember the exact moment I thought my life was complete. It was June 15, 2019, at the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay, California. The sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that seemed almost artificial in perfection. 200 of our closest friends and family were seated in white chairs on the manicured lawn, facing an altar draped in white rose eucalyptus. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as Jessica Marie Hartwell, soon to be Jessica Marie Caldwell, walked down the aisle on her father's arm. She was stunning. There's no other word for it. Her wedding dress was a custom Vera Wang, a mermaid silhouette with hand-sewn lace that must have cost a fortune, though I didn't know exactly how much at the time, because I had given her an unlimited budget and told her to plan her dream wedding. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, with a few loose curls framing her face. Her blue eyes sparkled with what I believed was love as she approached me at the altar. My name is Ethan James Caldwell, and I was 34 years old on my wedding day. I had spent the previous decade building Caldwell Technologies from a startup in my parents' garage to a company valued at over $400 million. We specialized in cybersecurity software, and our products were used by Fortune 500 companies and government agencies around the world. I had been featured in Forbes, Wired, and TechCrunch. I had a penthouse in San Francisco's Pacific Heights neighborhood, a vacation home in Lake Tahoe, and a car collection that included a Tesla Model S, a Porsche 911, and a vintage 1967 Mustang that had belonged to my grandfather. By any objective measure, I was successful, but success had come at a cost. While my college friends were getting married, having kids, and building families, I was pulling all-nighters, pitching to investors, and negotiating contracts. I had dated sporadically throughout my 20s, but nothing ever stuck. The women I met either didn't understand my work schedule or were more interested in my bank account. And then, I met Jessica. It was at a charity gala in San Francisco, one of those black tie events that I normally avoided but had been pressured into attending by my business partner, Marcus Chen. "You need to show your face, Ethan," he had said. "People are starting to think you're some kind of hermit. It's not good for the company's image." So I put on a tuxedo and showed up, planning to shake some hands, write a check, and slip out early. But then I saw her. Jessica was working as an event coordinator for the non-profit that was hosting the gala. She was 28 years old, with a master's degree in arts administration from Columbia and a passion for helping underprivileged children access music education. She was funny, intelligent, and seemed completely unimpressed by my wealth. When I told her what I did for a living, she just shrugged and said, "That's nice. Do you like it?" It was such a simple question, but no one had ever asked me. They asked about revenue, about growth projection, about exit strategy, but no one ever asked if I actually liked what. Most of the time, I told her honestly. It's stressful and exhausting, but there's something satisfying about solving problems and building something from nothing. She smiled at that. I feel the same way about my different scale, obvious, but the same. We talked for 3 hours that, long after the gala had ended and the catering staff was cleaning up around us. I asked for her number, and she gave it to me, but not before making me promise that I would actually call. Not just add her to some database of contacts I would never follow up with. I called her the next morning. Our courtship was a whirlwind. I was smitten from the start, and Jessica seemed equally enchanted. She didn't care about fancy restaurants or expensive gifts. She was just as happy eating pizza on my couch as she was dining at the French Laundry. She came to my office and met my team, asking thoughtful questions about our work and genuinely listening to the answer. She introduced me to her world too. The nonprofit galas, the volunteer program, the fundraising events that were her passion. Within 6 months, I knew I wanted to marry her. Within a year, I proposed. The proposal was on a private beach in Maui at sunset, with a 5-carat diamond ring that I had designed myself. Jessica cried, said yes, and threw her arms around me so hard that we both tumbled into the sand. It was perfect. The wedding planning took another year. Jessica wanted a June wedding, and she wanted it to be spectacular. I agreed to everything. The Ritz-Carlton venue cost $150,000. The flowers were another $50,000. The catering, the photography, the band, the dress, the honeymoon. By the time all was said and done, the wedding cost nearly $500,000. I didn't care. I would have spent twice that to see the look on Jessica's face as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was beautiful. We wrote our own vows, and Jessica's brought tears to my eyes. "Ethan," she said, holding my hands and looking into my eyes, "you are my best friend, my partner, my soulmate. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for as long as we both shall live." I believed every word. The reception was a celebration unlike anything I had ever experienced. There was dancing, laughing, toasting. My mother pulled me aside at one point, her eyes glistening with happy tears. "I'm so proud of you, sweet," she said. "Jessica is wonderful. Your father would have loved her." My father had passed away 3 years earlier, a heart attack that came without warning and left our family reeling. He had been my hero, my mentor, the man who taught me that hard work and integrity were the keys to success. Not a day went by that I didn't miss him. "I know, Mom," I said, hugging her. "I wish he could be here." At midnight, Jessica and I left the reception in a shower of rose petals and sparkler, climbing into a waiting limousine that would take us to San Francisco International Airport. From there, we would fly to Bora Bora for 2 weeks of honeymoon bliss. As the limo pulled away from the Ritz-Carlton, Jessica leaned her head on my shoulder and sighed contentedly. "That was perfect," she said. "Everything was perfect." "It was," I agreed, kissing the top of her. "And the best is yet to." I had no idea how wrong I was. The flight to Bora Bora was long but comfortable. I had booked us first-class seats on Air Tahiti Nui, with fully reclining pods and champagne service. Jessica slept most of the way, exhausted from the wedding, while I dozed fitfully and dreamed of the 2 weeks ahead. We landed in Papeete just after noon local time, then caught a connecting flight to Bora Bora. From the air, the island was breathtaking, a volcanic mountain surrounded by a turquoise lagoon so clear you could see the coral reefs below. It looked like a postcard, like something that couldn't possibly be real. Our accommodation was an overwater bungalow at the Four Seasons Resort, considered one of the most romantic destinations in the world. The bungalow had a glass floor panel that allowed you to watch tropical fish swim beneath your feet, a private deck with steps leading directly into the lagoon, and a view of Mount Otomanu that was straight out of a travel magazine. When we arrived, the staff greeted us with flower leis and fresh coconut. They led us to our bungalow, pointing out the amenities along the way: the infinity, the spa, the beachside restaurant. Everything was designed for romance, for intimacy, for newlyweds who wanted to celebrate the beginning of their life together. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell," the concierge said as he opened the door to our bungalow. "Welcome to paradise. Please let us know if there is anything we can do to make your stay more special." Jessica smiled and thanked him, then stepped inside. I tipped the concierge generously and followed her. The bungalow was even more impressive than the photos had suggested. There was a king-sized bed draped with white netting, a sunken bathtub with a view of the lagoon, and a fully stocked minibar with bottles of champagne already on ice. Rose petals had been scattered across the bed, and there was a welcome card congratulating us on our— "This is incredible," Jessica said, walking out onto the deck and gazing at the water. "Ethan, this is— I don't even have words." I came up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist. "Only the best for my wife," I said. Wife. The word still felt new on my tongue, thrilling and strange. Jessica Caldwell. My wife. "I love you," I whispered into— "I love you too," she said. But something in her voice sounded distant, and when I tried to turn her around to kiss her, she gently pulled away. "I'm exhausted," she said, not meeting my eyes. "The flight was so long. Do you mind if I take a nap before dinner?" "Of course not," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "We have 2 weeks. There's no rush." She smiled, that beautiful smile that had captured my heart, and disappeared into the bathroom to change. I heard the water run. Then she emerged in a silk nightgown and climbed into the bed. "Wake me in a couple hours?" she asked. "Sure, babe." I watched her fall asleep, then stepped out onto the deck to take in the view. The lagoon was impossibly blue, the sky clear and endless. A light breeze carried the scent of tropical flowers. It was, objectively, one of the most beautiful places on earth. So why did I feel a faint unease in the pit of my stomach? I told myself I was overthinking. Jessica was tired. We had just gone through a whirlwind wedding, flown halfway around the world, and were still adjusting to the time change. Of course she wanted to rest. I decided to let her sleep while I explored the resort. I walked along the wooden boardwalk that connected the overwater bungalows, nodding at other couples who were clearly also honeymoon. I stopped at the bar and ordered a beer, sitting on a stool overlooking the lagoon. "Honeymoon?" The bartender. He was a Tahitian man in his 50s, with a weathered face and kind eyes. "Just married yesterday," I confirmed. "Congratulations. The Four Seasons is perfect for heads. Very romantic." "That's what I've heard." He set the beer in front of me and leaned against the bar. "First time in French Polynesia?" "First time. We've talked about traveling here for years, but never found the time." "Ah, yes. Americans are always busy, always working." He smiled. "Here. We believe in taking time to enjoy life, to be with the people we love." "That's the plan," I said. 2 weeks of nothing but relaxation. But even as I said it, I wondered why Jessica hadn't wanted to explore with me, why she had pulled away when I tried to kiss her, why there was a guardedness in her eyes that I had never noticed before. "Stop it," I told myself. "You're being paranoid." I finished my beer and walked back to the bungalow. Jessica was still sleeping, her chest rising and falling rhythmically. I lay down beside her and closed my eyes, eventually drifting into a restless sleep. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The bungalow was lit only by the soft glow of the moon through the windows. Jessica was no longer. I sat up, momentarily disoriented. "Jessica? Out here!" her voice called from. I got up and walked outside. She was sitting in one of the lounge chairs, staring out at the moonlit lagoon. She had changed in flowing white dress. Not the silk nightgown, but something more formal, like she was ready to go somewhere. Hey, I said, sitting down in the chair next to her. How'd you sleep? Fine. There was a flatness to her voice that set my nerves on edge. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Are you hungry? I asked. We could go to the restaurant, or we could order room service. Whatever you want. Ethan, we need to talk. 4 simple words that have destroyed more relationships than any others in the English language. My heart began to. Okay, I said slowly. What's going on? Jessica finally turned to look at me. In the moonlight, her face looked different somehow. Harder, colder, like she had removed a mask she had been wearing for a long time. I need to tell you something, she said, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Jessica, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Just listen. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. She took a deep breath. Ethan, I don't love you. I never did. The words didn't make sense. They were sounds without meaning, syllables that my brain refused to process. What? I managed. I married you for your money. That's the only reason. I've been planning this for 2 years, ever since I met you at that gala. Everything, the courtship, the engagement, the wedding, it was all part of a plan to secure my financial future. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to laugh and say she was joking, that she was testing me, that this was some kind of elaborate honeymoon prank. But she didn't. She just sat there, watching me with those cold blue eyes. I don't understand, I said. Jessica, we just got married. Yesterday, you said vows, you cried. I'm a good actress, but why? Why would you do this? She shrugged, like we were discussing the weather rather than the destruction of everything I believed about my life. Because I grew up poor, because I watched my mother work 3 jobs and still couldn't pay the bills. Because I swore I would never live like, never struggle like that, never be powerless like. And then I met you, rich, lonely, desperate for love. You were the perfect mark. The perfect mark, I repeated numbly, like a con artist, if you want to call it that. I stood up abruptly, my hands shaking. This isn't real. This can't be real. Jessica, we've been together for 2 years. We've shared everything. You can't just. We've shared nothing, she cut in. Everything I told you about myself was carefully crafted to make you fall in love with my passion for non-profit work. I couldn't care less about underprivileged children. My master's degree from Columbia. I dropped out after 1 semester. My dead mother who worked 3 jobs. She's alive and well in New Jersey, running a real estate scam with her boyfriend. Each revelation was a knife to the gut. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The wedding, I said. $500,000. The house. The cars. The credit cards I put in your name. Yes, all very generous of you. Thank you for that. You're not going to get away with this. I'll call my lawyers. I'll have the marriage annulled. Jessica laughed, a cold, brittle sound that was nothing like the warm laugh I thought I knew. On what grounds? That I don't love you? That's not fraud, Ethan. That's just a bad marriage. California is a community property state. Everything you earned during our marriage, even if it's only been 1 day, is half mine. And if you try to fight me, I'll make the divorce so long and so public that your precious company's stock will tank. How do you think your investors will react when they find out that Ethan Caldwell, boy genius, was conned by his own wife? I felt like I was drowning, like the floor had opened up beneath me. I was falling into darkness. What do you want? I asked. Is this about money? I'll give you money. Whatever you want. Just tell me what you want. I want a settlement. $5 million transferred to an offshore account. In exchange, I'll agree to a quick, quiet divorce. No publicity, no drama. You can tell everyone that we grew apart or whatever lie makes you feel bad, and we never have to see each other again. $5 million. It's a bargain, really. You're worth 10 times that. Consider it the cost of a valuable lesson. I sank back into the lounge chair, my legs unable to support me. This couldn't be happening. This woman, this stranger, couldn't be the same Jessica I had fallen in love with. But she was. Or rather, she had never been that Jessica at all. That Jessica was a fiction, a character created specifically to deceive me. And if I say no, I asked, then we do this the hard way. I'll file for divorce in California, claiming emotional abuse. I'll give interviews to every tabloid that will listen. I'll hire the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state and take you for everything I can get. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you had just given me the $5 million. She stood up, smoothing her white dress. I'm flying back to Los Angeles tonight. There's a red-eye through Papeete. I've already booked it. Tonight? We just got here. I've gotten what I needed from this marriage. There's no reason to continue the charade. You can stay and enjoy the honeymoon if you want. The bungalow is paid for after all. Or you can fly home and start working on my settlement. Either way, my attorney will be in touch. She walked past me, back into the bungalow. I heard her gathering her things, zipping up her suitcase. And then she was back, standing in the doorway, her luggage in hand. For what it's worth, she said, you were one of the nicer marks I've. Genuinely kind, not creepy. It almost made me feel bad about what I was doing. Almost, but not quite. She checked her watch. My water taxi is arriving in 10 minutes. Goodbye, Eth. Have a nice life. And then she was gone. I sat on that deck for hours, staring at the moonlight on the water, unable to move, unable to think, the most romantic place on earth, and I was alone, having just discovered that my entire marriage was a lie. When the sun rose over Mount Otomanu, I finally went inside. I looked at the rose petals scattered across the bed, the champagne that had gone warm in its bucket, the welcome card congratulating Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell on their marriage, and then I did something I hadn't done since my father died. I cried. I stayed in Bora Bora for 3 days. I'm not sure why. I was in shock. Maybe I needed time to process what had happened before facing the... Or maybe I was just dreading the conversations I knew were waiting for me back home. The questions from my mother, my friends, my colleague. How do you tell people that your marriage ended before it even began? During those 3 days, I barely left the bungalow. I ordered room service that I didn't eat. I stared at the lagoon until my eyes burned. I replayed every moment of my relationship with Jessica, searching for the signs the red flags I had ignored. They were there, of course. Looking back, they were obvious. The way she had always deflected questions about her past, changing the subject when I asked about her childhood or family, the way she had been more interested in wedding planning than in actually building a life together, the way she had insisted on a prenup, in retrospect, protected her far more than it protected. She had studied me, she had learned what I wanted, what I needed, and she had become that person. It was a performance, flawless in its execution, and I had fallen for it completely. On the 4th day, I finally pulled myself together enough to book a flight home. The concierge, who had been so cheerfully arrived, looked confused when I checked out alone. "Is Mrs. Caldwell feeling unwell?" she asked. "She had to leave early," I said. "Family emergency." It was easier than the truth. The flight home was brutal. 18 hours of sitting with my thoughts, unable to sleep, unable to focus on anything except the wreckage of my life. By the time I landed at SFO, I was running on nothing but caffeine and adrenaline. Marcus was waiting for me at the airport. He was my business partner, my best friend, and the only person I had told about what happened. I had called him from Bora Bora on the 2nd day, barely able to get the words out. "Ethan," he hugged me tightly, something he almost never did. "Jesus, man, I'm so sorry. Thanks for coming. Where's your luggage?" "I just have the carry-on. I left most of the stuff at the resort. Couldn't deal with packing." He nodded and led me to his car, a black BMW parked in short term. As we drove toward the city, he was uncharacteristically quiet. "You can say it," I finally said. "Say what?" "I told you so. You never liked her." Marcus was silent for a moment. "I didn't trust her," he admitted. "Something always felt off, but I thought it was just my own paranoia. I never imagined that she was a con artist." We drove in silence for a while. The San Francisco skyline came into view, glittering in the afternoon sun. "What are you gonna do?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. She wants $5 million for a quick divorce. Says if I don't pay, she'll go public, drag my name through the mud, destroy the company's reputation." "That's extortion." "Is it?" "She's my wife, legally. California is a community property state. She's entitled to half of everything. But she lied. She committed fraud. Prove it. Her word against mine. And even if I could prove it, how long would that take? How much would it cost? Not just money, but reputation. The tech world runs on perception. If investors start doubting my judgment, if clients start wondering if they can trust me..." I trailed off, shaking my head. $5 million might be cheaper in the long run. "You can't seriously be considering paying her." "What choice do I have?" Marcus slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "No, absolutely not. We are not letting her win. There has to be something, some angle we can use." "I've been thinking about it for 3 days, Marcus. I can't find one." "Then we hire someone who can. A private investigator, a forensic accountant, someone who can dig into her past and find something." I thought about it. In my shock and grief, I hadn't considered actually fighting back. I had been so focused on damage control, on minimizing the fallout, that I hadn't thought about the possibility of turning the tables. "You think there's something to find?" I asked. "Ethan, this woman spent 2 years planning a con. That takes resources, connections, expertise. She didn't learn that in a vacuum. There's a history, other marks, other scams, something that will expose her for what she He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of diving into Jessica's past, of uncovering more lies and deceptions, was exhausting just to think about. "Let me make some calls," Marcus said. "I know a guy, Robert Tanaka, used to work for the FBI, now does private investigations for high-net-worth clients. If anyone can find something on her, it's him." "Okay," I said. "Make the calls." We pulled up to my building in Pacific Heights. The doorman greeted me with a smile, clearly unaware that anything was wrong. "Welcome back, Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell hasn't been home yet. Should I let her know you've arrived when she returns?" I felt a stab of pain at the mention of her. "No need," I said. "I'll handle it." I took the elevator up to my penthouse, the same penthouse I had carried Jessica across the threshold of after our engagement. The place that was supposed to be our home, our starting point for a life together. It felt empty now, cold, like all the warmth had been sucked out of it. I walked through the rooms, noting the touches Jessica had added over the past year. The throw pillows on the couch, the art on the walls, the photos of us together, smiling and happy, like a real couple in love. I picked up one of the photos, our engagement picture. taken in Napa Valley, and studied it. Jessica's smile looked so genuine. Her eyes looked so full of joy. How could anyone fake something like that? But she had. She had faked everything. I put the photo face down on the shelf and walked to the bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, just as we had left it before the wedding. Jessica's closet was still full of her clothes, designer dresses and shoes that I had paid for, jewelry that had been wedding. She would come back for them eventually, or she would send someone. Either way, her presence would linger in this apartment until I purged every trace of her. I sat down on the bed and pulled out my phone. There were dozens of missed calls and texts from my mother, from friends, from colleagues who wanted to know how the honeymoon was going. I couldn't face any of them. Instead, I opened my banking app and checked my accounts. The joint account I had set up for Jessica still showed a balance of $200,000, money I had deposited for household expenses that she had clearly been planning to drain at some point. There were already several large purchases on the credit cards in her: a $15,000 handbag, a $8,000 spa treatment, a $12,000 shopping spree at a boutique in Beverly Hills. All made in the 2 days since she had left Bora Bora. She wasn't wasting any time. I closed the app and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, I had been the happiest man alive. I had married the woman of my dreams, flown to paradise, and looked forward to a lifetime of love and partner. Now I was alone, betrayed, and facing the prospect of either paying off my blackmailer or engaging in a public battle that could destroy everything I had built. Some honeymoon. Robert Tanaka was a small, intense man with sharp eyes and a permanent expression of skepticism. We met in his office in the financial district, a sparse room with no windows and a desk covered in manila folders. Marcus had arranged the meeting for the day after I returned from Bora Bora, promising that Tanaka was the best in the business. "Mr. Caldwell," Tanaka said, shaking. "I've read the brief that Mr. Chen sent. Quite a situation. That's one word." He gestured for me to sit. Marcus took the chair next to me, and Tanaka settled behind his desk. "I have to be honest with you," Tanaka said. "Cases like this are difficult. Marriage fraud is notoriously hard to prove. The standard for annulment in California requires evidence of fraud that goes to the essence of the marriage, usually things like concealing an inability to have children or being secretly married to someone else. Marrying for money, unfortunately, isn't typically enough." "So what are our options?" Marcus asked. "We find something else. Something criminal. If this woman has done this before, and based on what you've told me, I suspect she has, there may be patterns we can trace. Previous marriages, accusations of fraud, criminal records, something that will give you leverage. And if you don't find it," Tanaka shrugged, "then you're back to negotiating a settlement. But I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Caldwell. People like your wife don't materialize thin air. They have history, and those histories leave traces." I nodded. "What do you need from everything? Every photo, every document, every piece of communication you have from your relationship. Bank statements, credit card records, phone records if you can get them. I want to know everywhere she went, everyone she talked to, every penny she spent. I can get you most of that." "Good. I'll also need information about how you met. You said it was at a charity gala?" "Yes. The San Francisco Foundation's annual benefit, September 2017. She was working as an event coordinator. I'll look into that. See if there's any record of her employment there. Who hired her? How long she worked." He made notes in a small notebook, then looked up. "One more thing, Mr. Caldwell. This investigation is going to dig up unpleasant information. Things you may not want to know. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Jessica's face in the moonlight, the coldness in her eyes as she revealed the truth. I thought about the 2 years I had spent loving a woman who didn't exist. "I'm prepared," I said. "Whatever it takes." "Good. I'll be in touch." Over the next few weeks, I tried to resume my normal life while Tanaka conducted his investigation. It wasn't easy. Word had gotten out that I had returned from my honeymoon alone, and the questions were relentless. I told everyone the same story, that Jessica and I had realized we weren't compatible and had decided to separate, but I could see the skepticism. A marriage that ends before the honeymoon is over isn't an incompatibility issue. It's a scandal waiting to happen. My mother was the hardest to lie to. She had been so happy at the wedding, so convinced that I had finally found the love of my life. When I told her that Jessica and I were divorcing, she was devastated. "But why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You two seem so perfect together." "It just didn't work out, Mom. I can't explain it." "Did something happen? Did she do something?" I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Not yet, anyway. The thought of admitting that I had been conned, that the wedding she had been so proud of was a sham, was too humiliating. "We just realized we wanted different things," I said. "It's better to end it now than to drag it out." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. That was my mother. She always gave me space even when it hurt her to do so. At work, I threw myself into projects, using the distraction of code and contracts to keep my mind off what had happened. Marcus covered for me when I needed time to meet with Tanaka or deal with legal matters. The rest of the team didn't know the detail, but they could tell something was wrong. "You okay, boss?" asked Elena, my lead developer. one afternoon when she caught me staring blankly at my screen. "Fine," I said. "Just working through some personal stuff. If you ever want to talk." "Thanks, Elaine. I appreciate it." I didn't talk. I couldn't. The shame was too overwhelming. 3 weeks after I returned from Bora Bora, Tanaka called with news. "I found something," he said. "You should come to my office." Marcus and I were there within the hour. Tanaka had spread several documents across his desk, including what looked like police reports and court records. "Your wife's name isn't Jessica Hartwell. It's Amanda Catherine Lewis. She was born in Trenton, New Jersey, 31 years ago, not 29 like she told you." "Amanda Lewis." The name meant nothing. Amanda has quite a history. In her early 20s, she was arrested twice. Once for check fraud, once for identity. Both cases were pleaded down to misdemeanor, so she avoided jail time. After that, she seems to have gotten smarter. No more arrests, but plenty of suspicious activity. He slid a document across the desk to me. In 2015, Amanda married a man named Gregory Whitman, a real estate developer in Scottsdale, Arizona. The marriage lasted 6 months. Whitman filed for divorce after discovering that Amanda had forged his signature on several financial documents and transferred nearly $300,000 to accounts in her. He tried to press charges, but Amanda disappeared before the police could find her. The case is still technically open. I stared at the document, a police report from Scottsdale PD, complete with a photo of Amanda. The face was familiar, though the hair was different, darker, shorter, and she looked younger, but it was unmistakably the woman I had married. In 2016, she resurfaced in Atlanta under a new name, Jennifer Morris. She became involved with a tech entrepreneur named David Chen, no relation to your partner. They were engaged for 8 months before Chen discovered irregularities in his accounts. He confronted her, and she disappeared again. Chen didn't press charges. Too embarrassed, I suspect. Tanaka slid another document across the desk. And then, in 2017, she appeared in San Francisco as Jessica Hartwell. She had a whole new identity. Driver's license, social security card, credit history. Someone helped her create this persona. Someone with resources and expertise. Who? That's what I'm still working, but I have a lead. Before she moved to San Francisco, Jessica spent 3 months in Las Vegas. During that time, she was seen frequently in the company of a man named Victor Reyes. The name made me sit up straighter. Victor Reyes was a known figure in certain circles, a fixer, a facilitator, someone who helped people with money problems and people who created money problems for others. He had never been convicted of anything, but his name came up in connection with fraud cases throughout the Southwest. You think Reyes helped her create the Jessica Hartwell identity? I think it's likely. Reyes specializes in long cons, setting up marks, building false identity, coaching people on how to execute elaborate schemes. If your wife is connected to him, she's not just a solo, she's part of a network. I felt a strange mix of emotions, horror at the scope of the deception, but also something like relief. If Jessica, Amanda, was part of a network, there might be more evidence to find, more leverage to use. What do we do with this information? I asked. You have options. You can take this to the police and file charges. The forgery case in Arizona is still open. They might be interested in knowing that Amanda Lewis is now living in California under a new name. Or you can use this as leverage divorce negotiations. Tell your wife that you know who she really is, and that unless she agrees to a quiet divorce with no financial settlement, you'll expose her. And if I do that, if I expose her, she'll almost certainly face criminal charges. Fraud, identity theft, possibly more depending on what else we find. She could be looking at significant prison time. Prison. I thought about Jessica, Amanda, in a prison jumpsuit, paying for what she had done to me and to the others before me. But I also thought about the public scandal that would inevitably follow. My name dragged through the tabloids. My company's reputation damaged by association. The investors and clients who would wonder why they were doing business with a man who couldn't even see through a 2-year con. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time, but don't take too long. If she gets wind that you're investigating her, she might disappear again. And this time, she'll take whatever she can get her hands on first. I spent the next week wrestling with my decision. Part of me wanted revenge, wanted to see a man. I couldn't think of her as Jessica, pay for what she had. The nights I lay awake, replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for the truth beneath the lies. She deserved to suffer for that. She deserved to face consequences. But another part of me just wanted to pay her off, finalize the divorce, and move on with my life. The thought of a prolonged legal battle, of my personal life being dissected in court and in the press, was exhausting. Maybe the $5 million was worth it, just to be free. In the end, it was Marcus who helped me decide. You can't let her win, he said. We were in my office late at night, a bottle of whiskey between us. I know it's tempting to just make it go away, but if you pay her, you're not just losing money. You're telling her that what she did works, that she can do it again to someone else. That's not my problem, isn't it? You know what she is now. You know about the other men she's destroyed. If you let her walk away with $5 million, You're enabling her to do it again. And the next guy might not have the resources to recover. The next guy might not survive. I thought about Gregory Whitman in Arizona, about David Chen in Atlanta. I thought about the men I didn't know about, the ones who had been too ashamed to report what had happened. You're right, I said. I know you're right. But I'm scared, Marcus. I'm scared of what happens if this goes public. Everything I've worked for will still be there, he interrupted. The company will survive. Your reputation will survive. People get conned, Eth. It doesn't make you weak or stupid. It makes you human. Does it? Yes. And when you expose her, when you show the world what she really is, you won't be a victim. You'll be a hero. The guy who took down a professional con artist. That's a story people admire, not one they laugh at. I wasn't sure I believed him, but I wanted to. Okay, I said. Let's do it. The next day, I called Tanaka and told him to keep digging. I wanted everything, every piece of evidence, every victim, every connection to Victor Reyes. I wanted to build a case so airtight that Amanda would have no choice but to face justice. And then I did something that surprised even me. I reached out to her. It had been almost a month since the honeymoon, and we had communicated only through lawyers, but I wanted to look her in the face one more time. I wanted to see if there was any trace of humanity beneath the mask she wore. I texted the number I still had for. We need to talk, in person. Name the place. Her response came within minutes. The Fairmont, tomorrow at 3. Don't bring anyone. I agreed. The Fairmont Hotel was a San Francisco landmark, a grand old building on Nob Hill where presidents and movie stars had stayed. It was also public, crowded, safe, a smart choice for a woman who might be expecting trouble. I arrived early and took a table in the lobby bar, ordering a club soda and trying to calm my nerves. When Amanda walked in at exactly 3:00, I barely recognized her. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, darker, closer to the color in the old Arizona photo. Her makeup was more subdued, her clothes less flashy. She looked like a different person entirely. Ethan, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You look terrible. Thanks. You look different. I felt like a change. She ordered a martini from the passing waiter, then turned back to me. So, you wanted to talk. I wanted to understand. Understand what? Why you did it. And I don't mean the money. I mean, did any of it mean anything to you? The 2 years we spent together, the things we shared, was all of it fake? Amanda studied me for a long moment. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Regret, perhaps, or sympathy. But then it was gone. You really want to know? Yes. Fine. She took a sip of her martini. The truth is, Ethan, you were a job. A very lucrative job, but still just a job. I was hired to get close to you, to become whatever you needed me to be, and to extract as much value as possible. Everything I did was calculated to achieve that goal. Hired by who? Victor Reyes? Her expression didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten slightly on the martini glass. You've been doing your homework. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd be too proud, too embarrassed to dig into your own failure. I'm full of surprises. She set down her glass and leaned forward. What exactly do you think you know, Ethan? I know your real name is Amanda Lewis. I know about Gregory Whitman and David Chen. I know about the arrests in New Jersey, the forgeries in Arizona, the pattern of behavior that stretches back at least a decade, and I know that Victor Reyes is connected to all of it somehow. Amanda was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed. Not the warm laugh I remembered, but something colder, harder. You've been thorough. I'll give you that. So what happens now? That depends on what you want. If you think you're going to use this information to destroy me, you're in for a disappointment. I've survived worse than you, Ethan. I'll disappear, reinvent myself, and be scamming the next mark within a year. You can't stop me. Maybe not, but I can make your life very difficult in the meantime. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I have enough evidence to reopen the Arizona case. Enough to connect you to multiple frauds across multiple states. Enough to get the FBI interested, if I push hard enough. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. What do you want? She asked. I want the marriage annulled, quietly, without any claims on my assets. I want you to return the money you've already taken, the $200,000 from the joint account, the credit card charges, all of it. And I want you to give up Victor Reyes. Victor? She laughed again. You have no idea what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Victor Reyes isn't just some fixer you can take down with a phone call. He's connected to people you don't want to know about, people who make your tech money look like pocket change. If you go after him, you won't just be fighting a legal battle. You'll be fighting for your life. Is that supposed to scare me? It should. It scares me. And I've worked with him for 5 years. I studied her face, trying to read the truth behind her words. Was she bluffing? Trying to intimidate me into backing off? Or was there something genuinely dangerous about the world I was trying to expose? I'll take my chances, I said. Amanda shook her head slowly. You really don't understand, dude. This isn't a game, Ethan. This isn't some corporate negotiation where everyone shakes hands at the end and goes back to their lives. These are serious people with serious resources, and they don't like loose ends. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you targeted. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression. Then she finished her martini and stood up. I'll consider your terms, but don't expect an answer right away. I need to talk to some people first. You have 1 week. After that I go to the FBI. She picked up her purse and looked down at me. You know, in another life, we might have actually been good together. You're smarter than most of the marks I've worked. More resilient too. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Take it however you. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thingy. Be careful who you trust. In this world, everyone has an agenda, even the people you think are on your side. And then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd of hotel guests like she had never been there. 2 days after my meeting with Amanda, Marcus didn't show up for work. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Marcus was usually in the office before I was, but occasionally he had early meetings or appointments that kept him away. I sent him a text asking where he was and went about my morning. By noon, he still hadn't responded. I called his cell, straight to voicemail. I called his home, no answer. I called his wife, Linda, who said she hadn't seen him since he left for work that morning. He seemed fine, she said, her voice tight with worry. He kissed me goodbye, said he'd be home for dinner. Ethan, what's going on? I don't know. I'm sure it's nothing. I'll keep trying to reach him. But I wasn't sure it was nothing. I had a growing sense of dread that I couldn't shake. I drove to Marcus's house in the Marina District, a Victorian townhouse he had bought a few years earlier. His car was gone, which meant he had left for somewhere that morning. But where? I let myself in with the spare key he had given me years ago. The house was quiet, undisturbed, no signs of struggle, no indication that anything was wrong. I went to his home office and looked around. His computer was the screen locked. I tried a few passwords, his wife's birthday, his kid's name, but nothing worked. Then I noticed the notepad on his desk. Marcus always kept a notepad for jotting down ideas and reminders. The top sheet was blank, but when I held it up to the light, I could see the impression of writing from a previous page. I grabbed a pencil and lightly shaded over the impression. Words emerged. 2 p.m. VR. Embarcadero Warehouse. VR. Victor Reyes. My blood ran cold. Marcus had been meeting with Victor Reyes? Why? When had he set this up? And why hadn't he told me? I called Tanaka immediately. Robert, we have a problem. Marcus is missing, and I think Victor Reyes is involved. I explained what I had found, my voice tight with fear. Tanaka listened without interrupting. I'm gonna check on something, he said when I finished. Stay where you are. Don't do anything until you hear from me. Check on what? Just stay put, Ethan. He hung up, leaving me with a silence that felt suffocating. I sat in Marcus's office for 3 hours, checking my phone every few minutes, unable to concentrate on anything. When Tanaka finally called back, his voice was grim. I have news, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Marcus has been working with Victor Reyes for the past 2 years. The words didn't compute. What do you mean working? I mean Marcus was the one who introduced Amanda to you. He set up the whole thing. The charity gala where you met her, Marcus arranged for her to be there. He's been feeding information to Reyes throughout your relationship, your schedule, your financial situation, your emotional state, everything. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. That's not possible. Marcus is my best friend. He's my business partner. He's been helping me investigate. He's been controlling the investigation, Tanaka cut in, making sure you only found what they wanted you to find. The information about Amanda's past, the connection to Reyes, they let you have that on purpose. They wanted you to think you were in control. Why? What's the game? I don't know yet, but I'm guessing it's bigger than just the divorce settlement. Amanda asked for $5 million, right? That's nothing compared to what Caldwell Technologies is. If they can manipulate you into making certain business decisions, or if they can get access to your system. I thought about all the times Marcus had been in my office, had access to my computer, had known the details of every deal and every negotiation. He could have stolen anything, I said. Client information, proprietary code, financial records, everything. Exactly. This isn't a marriage con, it's corporate espionage, and you've been the target from the beginning. I sat in Marcus's office, surrounded by the possessions of a man I had trusted with my life, and felt my world collapse for the second time in a month. First Jessica, now Marcus. Was there anyone I could trust? What do I do? I asked Tanaka. First, we need to secure your company, change every password, revoke Marcus's access, bring in your IT team to check for unauthorized data transfer. Then we go to the FBI. This is beyond my scope now. We're talking about a multi-state conspiracy involving identity fraud, extortion, and possibly corporate espionage. That's federal territory. And Marcus? We find him. If he's meeting with Reyes, there might still be a chance to trace his movement. But Ethan, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that Marcus isn't coming back. People who work with Victor Reyes don't usually walk away when things go wrong. I thought about Marcus, my friend, my partner, the man who had stood beside me at my wedding. Had any of it been real? Or had he been playing me from the very beginning? Do what you need to do, I told Tanaka. I'll handle the company. I hung up and called my head of security, a former military officer named James Harrison. I explained the situation in as few words as possible. Marcus might be compromised. We needed to lock everything down immediately. To his credit, James didn't ask questions. Within an hour, he had assembled a team and begun the process of securing our system. I stayed at the office until midnight, watching the security team work and trying to assess the damage. The initial reports were not good. Marcus had been accessing files he had no business accessing, client databases, financial projections, the source code for our latest products. He had been copying data to external drives for months. How much had he taken? How much had he given to Reyes? I didn't. And the not knowing was almost worse than the betrayal itself. At some point, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll end up like Marcus. I stared at the message, my hands trembling. Then I showed it to James. We need to call the police, he said. No, we call the FBI. This just became a kidnapping case. Special Agent Diana Torres was not what I expected. I had imagined FBI agents as stone-faced, humorless automatons, but Torres was warm and approachable, with a quick smile and a reassuring. She met me at the San Francisco field office the morning after Marcus disappeared, and listened patiently as I laid out everything I knew. This is quite a story, Mr. Caldwell, she said when I finished. A con artist wife, a treacherous business partner, a shadowy fixer pulling strings behind the scenes. If I saw it in a movie, I'd say it was too far-fetched. Trust me, I wish it were fiction. I'm sure. She opened a folder on her desk. We've actually had our eye on Victor Reyes for some time. He's connected to a network of fraudsters and grifters operating across the western United States, mostly targeting high-net-worth individuals like yourself. We've had trouble building a case because the victims are usually too embarrassed to cooperate, and the evidence disappears faster than we can collect it. What about Marcus? What about the threat I received? The threat is concerning. We're taking it seriously. But I have to be honest with you, Mr. Caldwell. If Marcus is being held by Reyes's people, they're not likely to let him go easy. He knows too much. He's a liability. So what do? We build a case. You cooperate fully. Provide us with everything you have. Testify when needed. Help us trace the connections between Amanda, Marcus, and Reyes. In exchange, we'll do everything we can to find your partner and bring down this network. And if they come after me, we'll provide protection. A detail at your home and office. Surveillance on known associates of Reyes. We won't let anything happen. I wasn't sure I believed her, but what choice did I have? Okay, I said. I'm in. Over the next few weeks, I became intimately familiar with the FBI investigation process. Agents came to my office, my home, my penthouse. They interviewed my employee, reviewed my record, traced the flow of data that Marcus had stolen. They worked with Tanaka to build a comprehensive picture of the network it had targeted. What they found was disturbing. Victor Reyes had been running his operation for nearly 15 years. Targeting wealthy men across California, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. His method was always the same. Identify a mark, study his patterns, then send in a woman. Always beautiful, always charming, always perfectly tailored to the mark's preferences, to establish a romantic relationship. The relationships would last anywhere from 6 months to several years, during which time the woman would extract as much value as possible. Sometimes it was direct theft, forged signatures, drained accounts, stolen jewelry. Sometimes it was more subtle. Insider information, business secrets, access to powerful people. Amanda, or whatever her real name was, had been one of Reyes's most successful operatives. She had extracted over $3 million from her previous marks, and I was supposed to be her biggest score yet. But there was more to my case than just the marriage con. Marcus's involvement suggested that Reyes was expanding into corporate espionage, using relationships to gain access to valuable companies and intellectual property. The data Marcus had stolen from Caldwell Technologies was potentially worth tens of millions on the black market. This is bigger than we thought, Agent Torres told me during one of our briefings. Reyes isn't just running a con operation anymore. He's building an empire. Can you stop him? We're trying. We've identified several members of his network, including Amanda. We know she's still in the country. She's been spotted in Los Angeles and Las Vegas. We're building a case for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. But to really take down Reyes, we need someone on the inside. Someone like Marcus? Ideally, yes. If we can find him, if he's willing to cooperate, his testimony could be crucial. If we can find him. That was the question that haunted me. Nearly a month had passed since Marcus's disappearance, and there was still no sign of him. No body, no ransom demand, no contact of any kind. It was like he had vanished into thin air. Part of me still couldn't believe he had betrayed me. We had been friends for 15 years, partners for 10. We had built Caldwell Technologies together, celebrated successes together, weathered crises together. How could all of that have been fake? But then I thought about Jessica, about Amanda, and how completely I had been fooled by her. If I could be deceived by a woman I had only known for 2 years, why couldn't I be deceived by a man I had known for 15? Maybe the problem was me. Maybe I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people. Maybe I had been a mark my whole life without knowing it. It was a depressing thought. One evening, about 6 weeks after Marcus's disappearance, I was sitting in my penthouse, staring out at the San Francisco skyline, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Ethan, it's me. I froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was Marcus. "Where are you?" I demanded. "What happened? The FBI has been—" "Listen to me," he interrupted. His voice was low, urgent. "I don't have much time. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far." "What do you mean? What's going on?" "They have me. Reyes's people. They've been using me for years, ever since they found out about my gambling debts. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd destroy my family. I didn't have a choice. Marcus, the FBI can protect you. If you come in, it's too late for— They're going to kill me. I know too much. But before they do, I wanted you the truth. The whole truth." My heart was pounding. "What truth?" "The wedding. Amanda. It was all planned from the beginning, but not by me. I was just following orders. The real target wasn't it was your company. Reyes has been selling your proprietary code to Chinese competitors for months. The $5 million Amanda asked for, that was a smokescreen, a way to keep you focused on the divorce while we cleaned out your system." I felt sick. "How much did you take?" "Everything. Every piece of code. Every client list. Every financial record." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry. Where are you? Tell me where you are and I'll send help." "It doesn't matter. They're coming for me. I can hear them outside. Just promise me something." "What?" "Take care of Linda and the kids. Make sure they know I love them. And take down Reyes. Whatever it takes, make him pay for what he's done." "Marcus!" The line went dead. Marcus's body was found 3 days later, in a shallow grave in the Nevada desert. The FBI broke the news to me personally. Agent Torres came to my office, her face grave, and told me that hikers had discovered the remains about 50 miles outside of Las Vegas. Marcus had been shot twice in the head, execution style. His body showed signs of torture. I sat in my chair, numb, unable to process what I was hearing. Marcus was dead. My best friend, my betrayer, was dead. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell," Torres said. "I know this is difficult. Did you get anything from the scene? Any evidence that points to Reyes?" "We're still processing, but I have to be honest. Whoever did this was professional. They didn't leave much behind. So Reyes is going to get away with it?" "I didn't say that. Marcus's murder is a federal crime now. We're throwing every resource we have at this case. And we've had some breakthroughs on the financial side. We've traced some of the stolen data to a buyer in Shanghai. That gives us connections we didn't have before." "Connections to what?" "To Reyes's network, to Amanda, to the whole operation." "Mr. Caldwell, I know this feels hopeless, right? But Marcus's death might actually help us take down the people responsible." It was cold comfort. My best friend was dead, murdered by the same people who had destroyed my marriage and stolen my life's work. And all I could do was sit and wait while the FBI did their job. I couldn't accept that. I needed to do something. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the hunt. I worked with Tanaka to trace the money that had flowed through Reyes's network. I hired additional investigators to dig into the backgrounds of everyone connected. I even reached out to the other victims, Gregory Whitman, David Chen, and several others who had come forward after news of the investigation leaked, to pool our resources and information. What emerged was a picture of an operation far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. Reyes wasn't just running cons, he was running a criminal enterprise. He had connections to organized crime in Russia and China. He had operatives in a dozen states. He had lawyers and accountants who helped him launder money and hide assets. He was, in his own way, a criminal mastermind, and Amanda was his most valuable asset. Through our investigations, we learned that Amanda had been working with Reyes since she was in her early 20s. He had recruited her out of prison. She had been serving time for the check fraud charge, and trained her in the art of the long con. She was naturally talented, beautiful, intelligent, adaptable. She could become anyone her mark wanted her. Over the years, she had extracted millions from wealthy men across the country. The marriage con was her specialty. She had been married at least 6 times, each time walking away with a substantial settlement or stolen assets. I was just the latest in a long line of victims, but I was also different because I wasn't disappearing into shame and silence like the others. I was fighting back, and Reyes knew. The threats came first. Anonymous messages, dead animals left on my doorstep, a break-in at my office that the FBI attributed to Reyes's people. Then came the attempts to discredit me, planted stories in the tabloids suggesting that I had made up the whole con story to avoid paying my wife alimony. Then came the attacks on my business, a wave of cyber attacks that seemed designed to cripple our systems and drive away clients. Through it all, I held firm. I increased security, hired lawyers, fought back against every attempt to silence me. I gave interviews to reporters, laying out the whole story in excruciating detail. I testified before Congress about the dangers of corporate espionage and the need for stronger protections for victims of romance fraud. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Public opinion shifted in my favor. Other victims came forward, emboldened by my example. The FBI made arrests, low-level operatives at first, then bigger fish. They froze accounts, seized assets, dismantled the infrastructure that Reyes had spent years building. But Reyes himself remained elusive. He had gone underground shortly after Marcus's death, and no one seemed to know where he was. Amanda, too, had disappeared. The FBI had warrants for both of them, but warrants don't mean much if you can't find the person. I started to wonder if they would ever be caught, if I would ever get justice, if this nightmare would ever end. And then, 8 months after my honeymoon, I got a call from Agent Torres. "We found her," she said. "We found Amanda." Amanda was arrested in Miami, at a luxury hotel where she had been staying under yet another alias. The FBI had been tracking her for months, following the trail of money and fake identities that she left wherever she went. She had been remarkably careful, but she made one mistake. She used a credit card linked to one of her old accounts to pay for a spa treatment. The transaction flagged in a system the FBI had set up to monitor her known financial pattern. Within hours, a team of agents had surrounded the hotel. Amanda tried to run. She actually made it to the lobby before they caught her, but there was nowhere to go. She was handcuffed in front of dozens of witnesses, her perfect composure finally cracking as she realized it was over. I wasn't there for the arrest. The FBI had advised me to stay away, but I watched the footage later, over and over, savoring every second. The woman I had married, the woman who had destroyed my life, was finally facing consequences. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and drawn out. Amanda, whose real name, we eventually, was Natalie Grace Sullivan, was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and a dozen other federal crimes. She faced decades in prison if convicted. At first, she refused to cooperate. She hired expensive lawyers, claimed she was being framed, insisted that she was just a pawn in a larger game she didn't understand. But the evidence against her was overwhelming. Bank record, recordings, testimony from other victims and former associates. Her lawyers knew it, and eventually, they convinced her to cut a deal. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Natalie agreed to testify against Victor Reyes. She gave the FBI everything: name, dates, locations, method. She described the network in detail, explained how marks were identified and targeted, revealed the connections to overseas criminal organizations. Most importantly, she told them where to find Reyes. He was hiding in Costa Rica, in a compound outside of San Jose that he had purchased years ago as a bolt hole in case things went wrong. The Costa Rican government agreed to extradite him after the FBI presented its evidence, and within a few weeks, Reyes was on a plane to San Francisco to face federal charges. I was in the courtroom the day he was arraigned. He looked smaller than I had expected, a thin, balding man in his 60s, the forgettable face. This was the mastermind who had ruined so many lives? This was the monster I had been hunting for nearly a year? He didn't look like a monster. He looked like an accountant, but the evidence spoke for itself. Reyes was charged with racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, and, based on Marcus's murder, accessory to murder. The prosecution requested no bail, and the judge agreed. Reyes would spend the rest of his pre-trial days in federal custody. After the arraignment, Agent Torres found me in the hallway. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. "I thought I would feel triumphant," I said, "like I had won, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. These kinds of cases take a toll. You've been running on adrenaline for months. Now that it's over, your body is finally letting you feel the exhaustion. Is it over? The arrests are over. The trials will take time, probably years, but the network is dismantled. Reyes is in custody. Natalie is cooperating. For all practical purposes, yes, it's over." I nodded slowly. Over. I had been waiting to hear that word for so long, but now that it had arrived, I didn't know what to do with it. "What happens now?" I asked. "You rebuild. You move on. You find a way to live your life without this hanging over you." It sounded so simple when she said it, but nothing about my life had been simple for a very long time. The trials of Victor Reyes and Natalie Sullivan took place over the course of the following year. I testified at both of them. Long, grueling days on the witness stand, recounting every detail of my relationship with Jessica, every betrayal by Marcus, every moment of the nightmare I had lived through. The defense attorneys tried to paint me as a gullible fool, a man who had ignored obvious red flags because he was blinded by lust. They tried to suggest that I had invented or exaggerated the conspiracy to avoid responsibility for my own business failure. None of it worked. The evidence was too strong, the victims too numerous, the paper trail too clear. After weeks of testimony, both Reyes and Natalie were convicted on all counts. Reyes received 45 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole. Given his age, it was effectively a life sentence. He showed no emotion when the verdict was read, just stared straight ahead with those blank accountant's eyes. Natalie received 15 years, a reduced sentence as part of her cooperation agreement. She would be in her mid-40s when she got out, still young enough to start over. Part of me resented the leniency, but another part recognized that without her testimony, Reyes might have gotten away with everything. After the sentencing, I gave a statement to the press. I thanked the FBI, the prosecutors, and the other victims who had come forward. I talked about the importance of speaking, of not letting shame silence you. I expressed hope that the convictions would serve as a warning to other criminals who preyed on the vulnerable. What I didn't say, I couldn't say, was how hollow the victory felt. Yes, Reyes was in prison. Yes, Natalie was being punished, but Marcus was still dead. My marriage was still a sham. The 2 years I had spent with Jessica were still a lie. The trust I had placed in my best friend was still betrayed. Justice didn't erase any of it. It just added a period to the sentence. After the trials ended, I tried to return to normal life. I went back to work, throwing myself into Caldwell Technologies with renewed focus. The company had suffered during the crisis. We had lost clients, lost employees, lost market share, but it wasn't beyond saving. Over the next few years, I rebuilt it, slowly and painfully, until it was stronger than it had been before. I also worked to repair my personal. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the years with Jessica. I spent more time with my mother, who had stood by me through everything without judgment or recrimination. I started seeing a therapist, working through the trauma and trust issues that the experience had left behind, and eventually, carefully, I started dating her. Her name was Sarah, and we met at a conference for tech executives in Austin. She was the CEO of a healthcare startup, brilliant, ambitious, and completely uninterested in my money. In fact, she made a point of paying for our first few dates, insisting that she didn't want me to think she was after my wallet. We took things slowly, building trust over months of dinners and phone calls and shared experiences. I told her everything about what had happened, the con, the betrayal, the trials, and she listened without judgment. She had her own baggage, her own reasons for being cautious, and we navigated them together. After 2 years of dating, I proposed. She said yes. We got married in a small ceremony in Lake Tahoe, with only family and close friends present. No Vera Wang dress, no $500,000 budget, no honeymoon in Bora Bora. Just two people who had found each other, making promises we actually intended to keep. On our wedding night, as we lay in bed in the cabin I had rented for the occasion, Sarah turned to me and asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about everything I had been through, the pain, the betrayal, the years of recovery. And then I thought about where I was now, married to a woman I loved, surrounded by people I trusted, at peace with myself and my life. No, I said, no regrets. And I meant it. 5 years after my honeymoon in Bora Bora, I received a letter. It came to my office, in a plain white envelope with no return address. The postmark was from a federal correctional facility in Texas. I knew immediately who it was from. I almost didn't open it. What could Natalie possibly have to say that I would want to hear? Apologies would ring hollow. Explanations would be worthless. Whatever was in that envelope, it couldn't change the past. But curiosity got the better of. I opened the letter. Dear Ethan, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't want to hear from me either if I were in your position. But I've been in here for 5 years now, with a lot of time to think, and there are things I need to say. First, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me. I know you have every reason to doubt my sincerity, but for what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for what I did to you, but for who I was, for the person I allowed myself to become. I told you on our honeymoon that I grew up poor, that I watched my mother struggle, that I swore I would never be powerless. That part was true. The rest, the master's degree, the passion for charity work, was lies. But the fear that drove me to do what I did, that was real. I'm not trying to make excuses. There are no excuses for what I hurt people. I destroyed lives. I helped a murderer cover his tracks. I deserve to be here. But I want you to know that, somewhere along the way, something shifted. When I was with you, pretending to be Jessica, playing the role of your loving wife, there were moments when I forgot it was an act. Moments when I actually enjoyed your company, actually cared about your happiness. You were different from the other Marks. Kinder, more genuine. It doesn't make what I did okay. It doesn't earn me forgiveness. But it's the truth, and I thought you deserved to know it. I hope you found happiness, Ethan. I hope you found someone who loves you for real. You deserve that, Natalie. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down on my desk and stared out the window for a long time. I had spent years hating this woman. She had been the villain of my story, the symbol of everything that had gone wrong in my... To hear her express remorse, to hear her suggest that some part of our relationship was genuine, I didn't know what to do with. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to assume it was just another manipulation, another con. Natalie was a professional liar. Why should I believe anything she said? But another part of me, a part I had tried to suppress, remembered the moments she was talking about, the nights we had stayed up late, talking about nothing, the Sunday mornings in bed, reading the newspaper, the way she had looked at me sometimes with something that had felt like real affection. Had any of it been real? I would never know for certain, and maybe that was okay. Maybe the truth didn't matter as much as what I did with it. I thought about responding to the letter, writing something about forgiveness, about moving on, about finding peace. But in the end, I decided against it. Whatever Natalie was looking for, it wasn't my job to provide it. My job was to live my life, to love my wife, to be the best version of myself I could. Natalie would have to find her own closure. I put the letter in a drawer and went back to work. I'm writing this 10 years after my honeymoon in Bora Bora. A lot has changed in that time. Caldwell Technologies was acquired by a larger company for $1.2 billion, making me wealthier than I ever imagined possible. Sarah and I have 2 children, a daughter named Emily and a son named James, and we live in a house in Marin County, a view of the San Francisco Bay. My mother is still alive, though she's slowing down now, and she spends most weekends with us, spoiling her grandchildren rotten. I'm happy. It took me a long time to be able to say that without qualification, but it's true. I'm happy. But the experience with Natalie, with Jessica, has never fully left me. It's shaped who I am, how I see the world, how I approach relationships. I'm more cautious now, more skeptical. I don't trust easy. I question people's motives, even when I don't want. Some might see that as a negative, a sign that I was damaged by what happened, but I see it different. I see it as wisdom, hard-won through experience. I learned that not everyone is who they appear to be. I learned that love can be a weapon as much as a gift. I learned that trust must be earned, not assumed. Most importantly, I learned that survival is possible, that you can go through the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side. That life can knock you down so hard you don't think you'll ever get up, and then you get up anyway. I've tried to share these lessons with others. I've spoken at conferences and universities about romance fraud, about corporate espionage, about the importance of due diligence in both personal and professional relationships. I've worked with law enforcement agencies to help identify and prosecute con artists. I've funded research into the psychology of deception and the methods used by predators to manipulate their victim. It's not much, in the grand scheme of, but it's something, a way to turn my pain into purpose. Last year, I visited Bora Bora, this time with Sarah and the kids. We stayed at the same resort, in a different bungalow, but with the same stunning view. The kids loved it. The swimming, the snorkeling, the tropical birds that landed on our deck every morning. On our last night after the kids were asleep, Sarah and I sat on the deck, watching the moonlight on the lagoon. It was almost exactly like that night 10 years earlier, when Natalie had revealed the truth and my world had fallen apart. "You okay?" Sarah asked, sensing my mood. "Yeah," I said, just thinking. "About her?" I nodded. "It's hard not to, being here. This is where it all ended. Or started, depending on how you look at it." Sarah took my hand. "Do you wish we hadn't come?" "No. I needed to come back. I needed to prove to myself that this place isn't ruined, that what happened here doesn't define it, or me. And, is it ruined?" I looked out at the lagoon, at the stars reflected in the water, at the most beautiful place on earth. "No," I said. "It's not ruined. It's just different now. Everything is different now, but different isn't always bad." Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Ethan Caldwell." "I love you too, Sarah Caldwell." We sat there in silence, watching the moonlight dance on the water, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace, not the absence of pain. The pain would always be there, buried beneath the surface, ready to resurface at unexpected moments. But peace nonetheless. The peace that comes from knowing you've survived the worst and found something beautiful on the other side. My honeymoon with Jessica, with Natalie, had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. It had led to years of struggle, investigation, hard-won justice. It had cost me my best friend, my innocence, my ability to trust. But it had also led me here, to this moment, on this deck, with this woman beside me and 2 beautiful children sleeping inside. To a life I never could have imagined, better than anything I had dreamed of. Natalie had tried to destroy me. Instead, she had set me on a path that led to everything I had ever wanted. Some might call that irony. I call it redemption. The moon rose higher over the lagoon, and somewhere in the distance, a bird called out across the water. Sarah's breathing slowed as she drifted towards sleep. I held her close, grateful for her warmth, grateful for her love, grateful for the second chance I had been given. Tomorrow we would fly back to California, back to our normal lives. The kids' schools, Sarah's work, my board meetings and charity functions. But tonight, I would stay here on this deck, in this paradise, and remember the pain and the betrayal, remember the fight and the survival, remember the long road from that terrible honeymoon to this beautiful moment, and remember that no matter how dark things get, no matter how hopeless they seem, there is always a way, there is always hope, there is always the possibility of something better. I had learned that lesson the hard way, but I had learned it, and I would carry it with me for the rest of my life.